All right, and good afternoon, everyone. SpenVentures here. We have arrived at our destination. We are at Fort Christmas Historical Park. Now, we're going to take a look around the museum inside and talk about the fort itself. This fort was built back in the early 1800s, and it was part of the Second Seminole War. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as you give you a tour around the park and around the area. Now, first note, I have a new car. This is a 2026 Honda Civic Sedan LX. And this car is amazing. I love it. And it's a Lagoon Blue. And I'll show you guys here in a moment the outside of the car. Right now, you're seeing the inside of the car as well. And so I'll show you guys here. This is the dash. That's the screen there. Of course, I've got my Ohio State air freshener hanging out. And I've got the all the amenities. Of course, that's the simple park, reverse, neutral, drive, and sports mode as well. I couldn't put it in sports mode today because traffic was horrendous. As you can see, kind of the compartment. Here's the steering wheel. You got the volume setting. Sources on the dash. My car's not on right now, but you'd be able to see the dash all lit up with the mileage and the speed and everything else. And then, of course, this is the audio radio screen where I hooked up my phone to Bluetooth and CarPlay, so it plays my music and displays it right here on the screen. And of course, you got the air conditioning, the simple stuff there. More like the bells and whistles. Moreover, but it's a brand new car. I literally bought it 2 days ago, and it literally only sat on the lot for 2 weeks before I purchased it 2 days ago. So enough of that long intro, but let's go ahead and head on into Fort Christmas Historical Park. Ready for another SpenVenture? Alright, so we are at Fort Christmas Historical Park. There it is. So let's go ahead and head on into the museum. Hours may vary. Why is it locked? That's not good. Is it closed? 9 to 4. On the back side. Maybe it's on the other side. I'll go in. Explore Fort Christmas. Here's on this side. I'll go in. Because it's dark, so yeah. Right here. Let's see if I can get it to you. There we go with the glare. See a little bit in there for the as far as the okay, we're in, so let's go ahead and have a look around. Right now we're going around the, I thought this was the visitor center. Yeah.
Saws.
Planting America. That statue there. That's cool. Bringing up the, of course, this was back when the Second Seminole War.
This is
Post.
after.
Oh, after. This is after the
century in 1900.
1900s. Okay. So this is post Second Seminole War in the 1900s. But there is a fort here. So we're going to go see that later on. But just wanted you to kind of see the early 1900s farming equipment that they used back in the day, and some of the tools they used in planting and different things to grow food.
The statues in there were done by Hewlett Wheeler or Tex Wheeler.
Oh wow! Oh, the Tex Wheeler
Yeah. And
statue.
we
Or
have
Tex Wheeler horse.
we have a house that his father built, and he lived in as a young boy.
Yeah.
The Wheeler Bass House.
Okay. And then there's Will Rogers.
Soap Suds, sorry.
Huh?
Soap Suds, I think is the name of the
Yeah,
horse.
Soap Suds. Yep. That's the name of the horse. Is that a pack horse? Is that what Soap Suds was? A pack?
No. Soap Suds is probably a quarter horse, a fancy horse.
A quarter horse?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the statue he did of Will Rogers this is a statue he did on.
Oh, that's a statue of Roy Rogers.
You
Okay. Work became well known in the horse world. Rich horse owners hired Tex to portray their thoroughbred quarter horses and polo horses. Wow. All right, so we made it over to the post office. This is the post office right here. Post office was part of the early 1900s, I'd say 1913. We can see kind of what the mail looked like from Christmas. The Christmas Museum. Christmas Florida. Here's kind of the little historical background of the town of Christmas and why it was called Christmas, Florida. The first day issue of Christmas, Florida. The program of the opening ceremony, 1969. Stamp. You got the list here. It's sort of a glare. You kind of can't see the order of the event here, as well as the invocation. And of course, they had the band music selection, presentation of colors, the national anthem, pledge of allegiance, invocation, welcome, recognition of post office, introduction of the distinguished guests, remarks, introduction, and the benediction. The benediction's like the closing prayer that they do. So here's the kind of the post office and the mail sorter. This is where mail was sorted. Please do not touch. Oh, okay. This is kind of where mail was sorted and how it was sorted back in the 1900s. Early 1900s. 1908, 1913, up until, there's got to be a date. Oh, this is 1867. Wow. 1957, I'm sorry, 1957, not 1857. 1957. More or less a cards, of course, mail, normal mail. This is an old bank here that was used. Cash register. Used cash register. And a picture of Fort Christmas itself of the post office. So as you see behind me, this case is full of different utensils, materials, from the hot iron kitchen appliances to the ropes and the iron, like I said, irons to iron clothes. This is American, right here where I'm pointing at, this is the American fluting iron. It was used flutes, pleats, or ruffles into fabric. The collars or cuffs of fancy garments were often made detachable so it could be ironed in a machine. So, like the sleeves on your arm, the cuffs that are like around your wrist, that would be used to iron. This would be used to flatten things out and make them more smooth in such a case as going to like a big fancy dinner, a ball, or prom. And this one right here, this is a curling iron. No iron exhibit would be complete without a shout out to the curling iron. Examples of both heated and electric irons. I'll show you guys a little bit more so you guys get a better look of what they used to use. And they actually did have electricity. There you see an outlet plug to plug in the curling irons. It looked like it's just like it's an curling iron made out of iron steel. This is the old-fashioned curling iron for girls, of course. So we've entered the lunchroom. This is the lunchroom of a union school built in the 1930s. Until the time the lunch was eaten outdoors. Children bought lunch from home in a small bucket or basket. The lunchroom provided shelter from the rain and cold weather. In the late 1930s, Orange County Public Schools hired a cook. It cooked for a number of years. Ozma Canada, Sadie Hatch, Josie Hancock, Hattie Kilpatrick, Myrtle Pardon, Katie Woods, Betsy Clark, Miss Ira Johnson, Rachel Blum, Violet Walters, Mary Jane Evans, and local ladies cooked over the years. Women were great cooks. Boys always volunteered to help eat up any leftovers in the lunchroom. So this is the lunchroom. As we have a lizard that goes across the floor. So this is what the lunchroom kind of would look like inside here. This is the laundry. Of course, they have laundry day, or laundry day when they wash clothes. You got a stove here as well. Hot iron with kettles. And of course, kind of a bread making, kind of like a bakery. They had a place to bake bread and a place to churn butter. They had an old-fashioned butter churn, and they would crank this right here. It would crank. You can't crank it because it's locked in place, but you would crank this, and it would churn the butter inside. You'd place the milk and all the ingredients to make the butter inside in a butter bowl and a butter paddle. It was made on a daily basis, and the cows were milked morning and night. Children actually churned the butter, made the butter themselves. And the steps would be stained through cheesecloth, store in a crocked and cooling place overnight, skim off cream and churn immediately for sweet cream butter, or set out 6 to 12 hours, depending on the temperature of the day. Then churn for old-fashioned butter and buttermilk, fill it with cream, no more than 1/3 full, churn until yellow, smooth butter floats on milk, drain off the milk, wash butter with cool water until the water runs off clear. Of course, another place we have here is more of a stovetop. You got, of course, the teapots, the kettles, the bowl, the basin here, and of course, and then the firebox where we have the oven. You got an oven in here where you set the crock pot in here, and you press that, and then bake the bread on the top. You make soup in the oven or chicken. Welcome to the schoolhouse. There's the schoolhouse. This is where the kids would learn and read, write. There's small chairs. Of course, all these books for the kids that would read. They would read, learn to read. Robert E. Lee and the Road of Honor. I have all these different style of books here. Of course, I do like the ones that are laid out on the table here. Little chairs. Let's have a seat here. Let's have Oh, where are these small chairs? You can see here, and let's take a look at some of these books. Let's take a look at some of these books. Actually, it's called Dick and Jan. The World of Dick and Jan and Friends. Look here. This is kind of like it is simple, kind of like what my students at school would start to learn to read. These are all the different chapters of the story. They just have like little stories in a big book. Yeah, brief look at this classroom. This will be This is the classroom where the students would learn. And of course, they got books on there, learning to read and write. This was back in 1906 to 1969. This school was in operation with the Orange County Public Schools, as well as went on from probably, I would say, first grade up to fifth grade would be the classroom setting. This looks like first grade. Yeah, looks like first grade. Kindergarten up to fifth grade, maybe fourth grade. I don't know the grades, but they're up here, and this is where the teacher would teach here, and of course they would have a chalkboard. The chalkboard, that's where the teacher would stand and write down what the lesson is for the day. All right, so we have made it to the historical side of Fort Christmas and how Fort Christmas became a historical site here at the Fort Christmas Historical Park, and how Christmas, Florida was established as a small town. Behind me is why we are here today. As white settlers moved into the Florida in the 1820s to 30s, there were growing demands that the Seminoles be removed to a reservation west of the Mississippi. And in 1835, the conflict known as the Second Seminole War began. In 1837, Major General Thomas S. Jessup, overall commander in Florida, intense preparations to carry the fighting to the South Florida, where he believed he would find a large force of hostile Indians. These preparations including opening a road west side of the St. Johns River and building along the road several posts as depot for operation to the south. And on December 25th of 1835, Fort Christmas was established. On the north side of the creek, short distance from here, Jessup himself led the column south from Fort Christmas early in January. By late January, Jessup's troops were receiving supplies. And then while this simple wooden fortification was short-lived, it gave its name the town of Christmas, a short distance south of here. Now let's look at the fort itself. Fort Christmas. Shall we enter? And so, the Second Seminole War in Florida went from 1835 to 1842. And it was during this renegade that Jessup moved a column from Fort Mellon, Sanford, Florida, on December 17th of 1837, in the 3rd Regiment of Artillery. 4 companies of 4th Dragoons, and 4 companies of Alabama Volunteers. They came in on a train of 50 wagons with 20,000 rations to move. They hacked their way through the palmettos and cabbage palm hammocks, pine barrens, scrub building roads, 20 bridges, 20 to 70 feet long, very big, and causeways to reach the point. Then, from the 25th of December to the 27th of December, the fight raged on as the Seminoles came in on high hopes to defeat the settlers from Jessup only to end in defeat, with Fort Christmas having started on Christmas Day. The original fort, located about half a mile north of here on a creek named Christmas Creek, opposite side of the creek, an abandoned Indian village referred to as Powellstown. And it was dedicated on December 17th of 1977. Into the fort we go. Good, get out of the heat. This is the blockhouse. That's where we're about to go into. It was known as Lookouts. It was served as a lookout platform. And the lookout platform, there we go. So it was served as a lookout platform for Jessup and the protection of his troops here at Fort Christmas. And it was the opposite corner of the stockade as invasion of an Indian attack. 2 blockhouses, 4 feet overhang the second level, constructed of pine logs that were plentiful in the area, mixture of sand and lime that held it together to keep it stern and firm so the Seminole Indians, would not take over this fort. It was the use of the protection of the small walls of the stockade that should enemy breach a wall, the soldiers could move in the blockhouses and continue the fight, using the small gun ports located on all 4 sides of the fort, of this fort. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides of 4 corners of the fort. If they were to breach in, if the Seminole Indians breached in, the settlers would have the 4 corners and could still provide a blockade. A blockade is just basically a block to block them to keep the Indians out of the fort. And like I was saying before, this was the blockhouse. The blockhouse was used as headquarters for General Thomas Jessup and protection of his troops in an event of an Indian attack. So he would hide out in here. It was corner of the stockade, 20 feet square by 4 feet overhang on the second level. Constructed of pine logs and were plentiful in the area and chained off with a mixture of sand and lime. So the blockade was kind of a security checkpoint for General Thomas Jessup and his troops to avoid an Indian attack in killing his men. Alright, so we've entered the blockhouse. This is the blockhouse. It's part of the Florida cracker country. Cowboys, horses, anything you can think of from the era. And now we move forward through here, talking about the cattle drives at Deer Park. And of course, here are some of the statues. And other things here to show you guys. There we go. Ah, there it is. Okay, so here, this is kind of where the Florida cracker country comes into play. And items in the front. This is like used on cattle's nose to keep it from taking milk from its mother. It was like a mouthpiece. And you got the spur. And of course the branding iron. You got the branding iron HP, the branding iron V1, the 5, branding iron 7B, calf skin, cowboy hat, cowboy whip, the cow whip, branding iron 33. You got branding iron beehive, would be the shape of the bee, which would be right there, and the X, 7XL, which is in the shape of an X. Then you got the beehive, that's in the shape of a hive. You got this one, the iron single 2, which is a 2. There's the 33, and the B7. It's real kind of easy to identify. There's the B7, and the HP, because they're labeled. The iron, the way the iron is, it's shaped like it's named after. Alright, so these are some of the pictures of the Canada family. All these, I'm not reading all these, this will take way too long, but just kind of an overview of the Canada family that lived in Fort Christmas. Some of the families that lived here near the fort. Cox family, Hodges family, big photo album, the Austin family, and that raised their families here on the farm. It used to be a farm. Turned into the Second Seminole War. Tucker family, the Yates family, you got the Story family, Christmas post office. Here's the Christmas community. These are the people that lived in the Christmas community. There's 1895-96 Fort Christmas School. Baptism Day, which was 1912 to 1914. Then they have a Baptist church here. Fort Christmas 1939. Christmas school bus. School play, and community bazaar. Trimming the tree of Fort Christmas, or in Christmas, Florida. So this is all like people that lived in the town of Christmas, not technically here at the fort. All right, so we have made it to the cane syrup and grinding mill. This one of my well-known. I know this from previous places I've visited historical parks. Most of them have a cane grinding mill. Where I go here, this is how they do the grinding of the sugar cane, and as you can see here, I'll show you guys there a little bit. So this is kind of how it is on this side. I like it this way. To grind the cane, a mule was hooked up to the sugar cane behind me, right there. It was hooked up to the sugar cane, a log shaft that turned and rolled as the mule walked around. The cane was fed through the rollers, through the juice. Presented stalks were collected in a barrel. Virtually every farmer had sugar cane in the 1800s. Provides syrup, brown sugar, and rocky candy. The hay, now, further on, talks about the kettle. Got 60 gallons of cane juice. It took 4 to 5 hours for the juice to be cooked down into that rich flavor. As the juice boiled, it produced a long handle skimmed off the foam. That's the kettle right there. As it was fermented, the skimming shook and projected the buck, which made pigs squeal in drunken delight. Syrup was stored in earthenware jugs, bottles, and tin buckets. Not the number 10, but 10 buckets. Cane grinding was more than just an industry. Time of socializing, and family and neighbors gathered about the boiler in which a cane was being boiled down to syrup. Gathered around, and as the butter hard ball stage, it dumped into butter-coated pan. Children gathered around with buttered fingers to have a candy pull. The syrup was pulled in golden strands of candy. Plenty of good food to eat, music, and sometimes dancing was presented and performed as the sugar cane became fermented, and basically that was the last ingredient. It was produced. All right, so I'm standing right in front of the Beehead Ranch House. Now this is kind of the overall cowboy-ish, where the cowboys would be their home on the ranch. And so it was the Beehead house. There's a chicken. Ooh. But anyway, the Beehead Ranch House, cracker name group of tree is Head. Bees filled the hollows of the live oak trees with honey. And they also numerous honey trees, resulting in the house being named the Beehead Ranch House. It was built in 1917 and labored for the Tachahachi Ranch Company. The Beehead Ranch House provided the home on the ranch of Furman and his family. Large ranch consisting of 19,000 acres and bunkhouses, barns, and outbuildings. That's where they went to the bathroom. Also in 1925, the ranch was purchased by a group of sportsmen from Sanford and Orlando. It became a hunting club and called the Tachahachi Game Preserve, renowned for excellent hunting and its yearly barbecue dinners. Yeah. And it was in the property was sold to the state of Florida in 1977 and is now the Tachahachi State Reserve, and it was moved to Fort Christmas in 1993, 1 year after I was born. I was 1 year old. It reflects the life on the cattle ranch in the early 20th century. Let's go see the ranch house. And here is the ranch house, room 1. This is kind of how they did cattle ranching in the 1870s to 1930s. Florida crackers. Just kind of, they had the cattle on the open range. They had the cow horse and the cow whip. We did talk about the cow whip earlier. In the fort, they had a display of a cow whip, as well as the roundups and the cattle drives. I've been to one cattle drive in Dallas, Texas. I went to a cattle drive. That was because I was at the Ohio State football game when they played at Texas Christian University. And here we made it into the bedroom. This was the bedroom of the owners of the house, a cowboy and his wife, and they also had 3 kids. You can see the bedroom here. You got the baby doll wagon, buggy, chair, the main bed, the cowboy hat, its clothes, and then her hat, wife's hat. And here, this would be the dining room. This is the dining room, which I really like. This is really nice. Reminds me of like an old, not an old cabin, but like an old log house, which kind of representation of the log house back in Abraham Lincoln log house in Illinois and in Kentucky as well. Of course, that's a big chicken. And also in the kitchen. This is the kitchen. This would be with the stove right here. Hot iron stove where they make their food as well. And mostly the wife of the farmer, of the cowboy, would make food. You got the skillet, you got the kettles, the pots and pans, and I don't think it's a gas stove. It looks like a charcoal. I think this is a charcoal stove, right on coal. And then you have the pantry here. Oh, some tomatoes, you got some fruits and stuff, and then you got the sink. And the kitchen table. And into the bedroom here of this house. You got at least do not sit on the furniture. And it's got the sewing machine here, the women would sew their clothes, do some sewing as well. It's like this is some type of home. Look and see what the house. This is the Simmons house, Simmons 3, 1915. So George Simmons, this is the Simmons house. George Simmons, born in 1867, and his sister Martha. They were born in 1872 and both children of George and Ann Simmons. They never married and remained on the family farm, caring for their father and mother in their final years. After his father's death in 1912, George began constructing a new house just southwest of the old place. The house centered living room with bedrooms, a separate kitchen and dining room. The separate kitchen allowed the main house to remain cooler in the heat of the summer. Since most of the house fires started in the kitchen, where the cook stove burned firewood, it also provided a measure of safety against the spread of fire in the main house. That's where we started out with in the kitchen. That's why they had that big old chimney. Alright, so the Woods house, Thomas Jefferson Woods. Not to be confused with Thomas Jefferson, the second president of the United States. Thomas Jefferson Woods, he was born in 1896, and he was the son of Francis Jackson Woods and Emma Matilda Woods. And so they would have the plateau in 1927 with he and his wife living in the Palmetto. That leaned to struggling to complete the house in time for the birth of their first child, Nellie. The house originally had 3 rooms, a large front room, and 2 bedrooms, and it made up all later enclosed areas to make the bedrooms. They removed walls between the bedrooms and to make a large kitchen/dining room. Pioneers of Fort Christmas depended heavily on wild game of the woods and fish, rivers, and creek. Like most men, Tom learned to hunt and trap as a young man. And he was able to use these skills to provide for his family because he sold the hides of alligator, raccoon, possums, and otters, popular for making luggage, shoes, coats, and handbags. He also hired as a guide, taking down folks on hunting and fishing trips along the St. Johns River, which that river actually runs north into Jacksonville. Also, he worked for tips of receiving share of the game for his own table. This house has exhibited fine photographs and artifacts reflecting the hunting and fishing and trapping of Thomas Jefferson Woods. Let's enter the house with a longhorn. Okay, I like this. This reminds me of entering like a restaurant. Because they got all the taxidermy animals on the door frame. Of course, and they have the piano and songbook. Come now, Almighty King, fairest Lord Jesus. Oh, we sing that song sometimes in church. And as well as the dining room table with the kitchen. Alright, so we have come to our last house on the property of Fort Christmas Historical Park. This is the Brown House in 1900, built in 1900. It was Ephraim Legend Brown built this house in 1900. Mr. Brown, he was born in Maracus, Georgia in 1859, came to Florida at the age of 16. He worked as a surveyor. In 1882, he married Julia Roberts of the Roberts Plantation on Lake Mills. He purchased a 40-acre pair of land where he built a log home and planted an orange grove. When the log home was destroyed by a fire, the family lived in a barn while a new home was built. He used the charred but sound timbers of the log home for floors joists in the building. Citrus trees planted by Mr. Brown and born trees until it froze in 1985. In the year the Brown family was recognized by the Florida Department of Agriculture as a pioneer, he was family under the 100-year farm family program. So let's go check out the Brown House. You can see it's already filled with oranges and citrus. It's very well known for growing and planting citrus and fermenting it, and even though getting out the orange juice. That's why orange juice is and citrus is very well known in the state of Florida. Here in the state of Florida, and it's also our state's fruit is the navel orange with the orange tree and the orange groves. Back when I went to Claremont, that is the city where most of the oranges are grown in the citrus fields. I'll link that video in the description down below as we look at the home of the Brown house. See, that's kind of like the living room area, sitting room, and you got the fireplace there. As well as here's the bedroom. You need the bedroom and the baby in the box. Or in the crib. And the dresser, and you got the basin with the water for washing hands and face. And here's the sink. It's kind of a small house. Not much left, but it definitely made do in the 1900s. There's the wash tubs where they bathe. And a biggie. Don't want to get too close. Bees everywhere. But, like I said, that was the Brown house. We have made our way around made our circle to the different homesteads at Fort Christmas. All right, so thank you all for joining me on this SpenVenture here at Fort Christmas Historical Park. Learning a lot today between the farming on the homestead and the ranchers and their homes to the Second Seminole War that was in 1835, and learning how General Jessup protected his army from the Seminoles, and eventually Chief Osceola signed the peace treaty and moved on, and they went their separate ways, and everything else. And got to take a look at some of the old historical homes from the different families that lived in the Christmas, Florida community, along with on the farmland homestead. Because this actually was not an historical park originally. This was all farmland. There was nothing here. Then they built on into this and made it a historical park. And also, a couple of those homes are on the National Register of Historical Places here nationwide. So, thank you all for joining me. And be sure to subscribe to SpenVenture, drop a like on the video, and always wanted to do this. Ring the bell. Ring the bell for notifications. Also like the video if you love historical things. And so with that, this historical site and historical tour is over, and we will see you all on the next SpenVenture.